So it's that time of year again. Or if you're like me, you'll just wait until the first couple days of January to actually do these lists. So this is the first of a few lists I'm going to be doing for the next few days, the most surprising movies of 2024. And, you know, these movies, they weren't on my radar. They looked either not so good, or they kind of had like weak trailers, or I just didn't really think they would actually be good or worth talking about. But eventually I was like, you know, I'll still give them a chance at some point. And yeah, these were the movies that I'm actually really glad I saw. So let's start off with some honorable mentions, including Thelma. This was a movie that starred June Squibb and Richard Roundtree in one of his last roles. It was a pretty fun action comedy, which is surprising given the actors who are in this movie. It's a fun comedy movie with great performances by June Squibb and Richard Roundtree. Sting. This was a pretty fun horror comedy that's in vein of some 80s horror comedies and such. It was a lot of fun. It was goofy. It was silly. It was pretty intense at times. Even though I didn't care for the ending too much, I still had a pretty fun time with this movie. Rebel Ridge from Jeremy Saline. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. The guy who directed Green Room. This is a movie that seemed like it was in development hell for so long, and then it finally dropped on Netflix with little to no fanfare. And I'm kind of upset that there was no actual press for this movie, because like this movie is actually pretty good. Aaron Pierre is really good in this movie, kind of like a modern take on Rambo, surprisingly. Hopefully it doesn't go down the Rambo route. But Aaron Pierre was pretty good. It was thrilling, it was intense, and honestly I kind of wish I saw it on a big screen. Strange Darling. This was a movie that didn't really get a whole lot of buzz. I feel like it got a lot of buzz, but in smaller circles, and it didn't really do too well here. I think it only played for like a week in my area. This was a fun, surprising thriller cat and mouse game about two people, one who's being chased by someone who's going to be killed, who's trying to kill them and such. It's a pretty intense movie that's kind of like Pulp Fiction. It's like a lot of it is kind of out of order and such, so it is kind of fun going back and like going and see, oh, this is where this probably would have taken place and such, and also the performances are pretty good, and that last image still haunts me a bit. Saturday Night. This was a movie that was not even in production by the time I did my list last year, when I was like, oh, these aren't my most anticipated movies and such. But this was a movie I thought, you know, it's probably going to come out later because it's only just filming in 2024. But no, they managed to get it out in 2024 in time. Okay, this was a pretty cool, surprisingly funny, surprisingly intense movie, despite the fact that it's based around Saturday Night Live. About the very first episode of Saturday Night Live. The performances are pretty good, particularly all the actors who kind of portray a lot of the, you know, people associated, like Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, Lorne Michaels. It's all really fascinating to kind of see that. And also the last honorable mention, Dee Dee. This was a coming-of-age movie that takes place in the 2000s about a teenage Asian boy who, you know, he grows up, he's dealing with a lot of issues, particularly with his family, particularly with his friends, and it is kind of strangely relatable, and I do think it is very well done overall. Definitely worth checking out at some point. So let's get into my top 10 most surprising movies of 2024. Starting off at number 10, The First Omen. When I heard about this movie, I'm like, why are they doing this? Why do we need another Omen movie? Oh, right, IP, that's why. And the trailers themselves didn't look particularly good. I think they only put tickets out on sale for this movie the week before this movie came out. So I'm like, this movie's a dud. This movie's gonna bomb. This movie is not worth your time. And here I am to say, it is surprisingly worth your time. It is a really creepy movie. It is pretty intense. The performances are pretty good. And it's definitely one of the better Omen movies I've seen in a while. Definitely one of the better, like, demonic possession movies, strangely. Definitely worth your time, especially if you do like the first Omen movie. At number 9, Late Night with the Devil. This was a movie that I saw all the way back in April of last year. This movie was pretty intense, pretty creepy. Definitely I did dig like the presentation of the found footage and like how it's presented as like this 70s-esque talk show, and how they kind of like have all this like practical stuff, minus some of the AI stuff, but it is a pretty well-done movie with great performances by David Dastmalchian as the host of the show, as well as the girl who was possessed in this movie. I thought she did a really good job. She was pretty creepy in the movie. And I do like a lot of the stuff that they kind of did in this movie, even though I kind of don't like some of the reveals, and I don't like how some things are kind of just left out entirely and kind of just thrown back in at the end. It's definitely worth watching at some point. At number 8, A Complete Unknown. Now, I like James Mangold as a director, but after Dial of Destiny, I was kind of disappointed. But I was kind of curious to see like what this movie was going to be like with people like Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan, Edward Norton as Pete Seeger. It's like, okay, what's this movie going to be like? And surprisingly, it was a really well done movie. I really enjoyed the performances. I really enjoyed the music. I definitely appreciated the approach to Dylan and how they kind of like show his side of the story basically, and how he kind of didn't like the whole idea of fame and such. And I do think it is a more grounded movie than what you would expect from a music biopic these days. At number 7, Smile 2. I was not a big fan of the first Smile movie. I said it was just okay at best, but it kind of felt like a weird combination of Sam Raimi and Ari Aster. And this movie definitely picks a side. It's definitely more in the... It definitely tries to do a little bit of both in this movie, but I think this movie does it a little bit better. Naomi Scott, I thought she was incredible in this movie. I thought the scares were so much better in this movie than they were in the first movie. There were so many that just kind of caught me off guard. Some jump scares that were actually effective. And I did think it was really creepy overall. Although I do have some issues with, like, you know, how this demon kind of, like, moves and such. It's definitely questionable and such. But this movie is definitely... I think this is a better movie than Smile 1. Smile 1 is just okay. Smile 2 is even better. It's like they gave Parker Finn a lot more money to kind of just do whatever he wanted. And he did. At number 6, Transformers 1. If you had told me that a Transformers movie would be one of my favorite animated movies of the year, I would say, you're crazy. Like, what is the point? Especially after that first trailer, which I'm like, oh, this looks like garbage. This looks like hot garbage. Why would I even bother with this? And here I am to say, definitely watch this movie. This movie is gorgeously animated with great performances. So many interesting themes, and I definitely actually cared about the characters a lot more. If you felt burned by something like Mufasa the Lion King recently, this has a very similar story, and it's actually better. Like, it's actually worth watching. And I do think it actually kind of makes me mad that this is the one Transformers movie in like the last 20 years that didn't do as well as expected, and it's probably not going to get a sequel. And it's like, really, people? This is the one time you don't want to see a Transformers movie? Are you kidding me? At number 5, A Real Pain. I didn't get a chance to review this movie, but I was kind of intrigued because a lot of these reviews are saying how great it was and how really well done it is. It's like, I mean, I'll give it a chance if it is playing in my area. And surprisingly, it was playing in my area. This was a movie that is very small, very, not a whole lot of action happens in the movie. It's about these cousins who go to Poland for a Holocaust tour because their grandmother, you know, survived the Holocaust and such, and they kind of go and kind of bond and such with other people who are on the tour and such. It's like, okay, it sounds kind of boring, but it's mainly the two performances, particularly Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin, who are just incredible in this movie. Kieran Culkin will likely be nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I would really like to see Jesse Eisenberg nominated for Best Actor. He was fantastic, especially in this one scene where Kieran Culkin has to leave the table for a moment and he's kind of discussing his side of the story. It's very well done. Also, it does shout out an area that I'm near, so I'm like, okay, that's really cool. At number 4, Flow. This was an animated movie. I forgot what it's from, like what country it's from. I think it's Latvia or something like that. But it's about a cat who survives this post-apocalyptic event and actually has to survive with all these other animals. The movie is done without dialogue, and it's mostly just sounds from the animals that are kind of around. That was, okay, let's see how this works. And it is surprisingly well done, absolutely gorgeous, great score. It is absolutely, it's one of the most heart-wrenching movies, and it doesn't have a single word in it. At number 3, Alien Romulus. The best Alien movie since Aliens, and it still holds up. Alien Romulus is a lot of fun. It throws back to a lot of stuff from the original Alien and Aliens. It's a nice blend of both the action side and the horror side, and I think it works very effectively. And even though there are some Easter eggs I think don't work, like David's phrasing of, you know, get away from her, I do think it's still worth watching. The performances are really good. I do like the practical effects of this movie. Definitely, in my opinion, Fede Alvarez's best movie. At number 2, The Substance. I said this movie was really good after watching it, but like it's stuck with me for all these months, and it is incredible. It has great performances, particularly from Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, Dennis Quaid even. The look of the movie is absolutely interesting. I love the production design. I love the cinematography. I love the effects, the makeup effects, like when you finally, like when they kind of like reveal like what has happened at the very end of the movie. It's like, holy crap, everything that's kind of happening. I also love this movie too. There's hardly any dialogue in some scenes. Like there are some very important scenes that happen, like the moment when you know, Demi Moore takes the substance the first time. That's very well done. It's also done without a lot of dialogue. The scene where Demi Moore is getting ready for a date, surprisingly intense, and there's no dialogue in that scene. It's very well done. It's one of those movies where it's like, I need to be in a mood to watch this movie, but I am so glad that I watched this movie. And I'm so glad it's getting a lot of buzz after its release. And the number 1 most surprising movie of 2024 to me was The Wild Robot. This was a movie that, when I first saw it, I liked it just fine. Then I saw it a second time. And all my issues with the first time I watched it went away completely. A lot of it just kind of like, I didn't have any issues the second time. The animation, gorgeous. The voice acting, great. The themes, great. The score, everything about the movie, in my opinion, is fantastic. And I think it's the only movie this year that I have watched multiple times, like at least 3 times. So it's one of those movies that I feel like it's also going to be one of those movies that, you know, families are going to take their kids to see, or their kids are going to really want to watch it and such. But I think it's the parents who are actually going to appreciate it a lot more than the kids. Like the kids, I feel like, you know, they like the talking animals and the animation and such, but the parents will kind of understand like a lot of the stuff that's kind of happening, particularly the relationship between Bright Bill and Roz. That's very well done, very well handled. Definitely makes, I feel like it definitely made me appreciate my parents a lot more than I did when I was younger. So I definitely appreciate this movie a lot. So those are my picks for the most surprising movies of 2024, but I also want to talk about the most disappointing movies of 2024, which will be my next video. So what are some of the movies that surprised you this year? Comment, or I should say in 2024, because it's now 2025. Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.